Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and beautifully diverse neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We hope that you will connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram. Today, our guest is Melissa Hart. She'll be here to celebrate her beautiful book, Better with Books. 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in tweens and teens. Before we invite Melissa in to celebrate Better with Books, we want to celebrate one of our favorite read aloud books. That's right. We want to celebrate the last surviving dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. This book has it all. 6 cranky relatives, 3 mean dinosaurs, and 1 very cranky Tyrannosaurus. This is a wonderful book written by our friend Stephen Joseph. The book tells the tale of how the dinosaurs became extinct. And we're not talking about that life-ending meteor thing the paleontologists are often talking about. No, the Tyrannosaurus is so very cranky that she makes all the other bigger and meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining. That's right, the Tyrannosaurus. These 2 dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that's where cranky people come from. This really is a fun book. When we were out at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, families loved this book, and the kids loved it when their parents were trying to pronounce the Tyrannosaurus. Your kids are going to love it too. Check it out. The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, by our friend Stephen Joseph. Available on Amazon.com and many other sites. We also want to let you know that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Little Pearl's Reflection by our friend Sarah Ann Kinnear. This is a beautiful series for kids in grades 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think even 6th graders are going to love this book. If your kids love mysteries, if they love solving puzzles, if they love having their imaginations ignited, they're going to love Little Pearl's Reflections by Sarah Ann Kinnear. Sarah Ann Kinnear is she's a veteran teacher and school administrator who, for over 35 years, was all about doing things to ignite kids' curiosity and their creative thinking. And that's why she created Little Pearl's Reflections, to do that outside of the classroom, to do that in your home, to ignite kids' imaginations, to ignite their ability to think creatively and solve puzzles. Such fun, but also such a great skill to develop and to carry on into later life. Check it out today, Little Pearl's Reflections, a beautiful, beautiful book series for your kids. It's available from our friend Sarah Ann Kinnear on Amazon. Joining us on the line right now from Eugene in Oregon. She is the author of a really important book. It's called Better with Books, 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in tweens and teens. Please welcome to the show, Melissa Hart. Melissa, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I am delighted to be here, and I love the way you said that subtitle with so much energy and excitement.
Well, I'm one of the, I wrote a video a number of years ago, and it had a pretty long subtitle, too, and it drove people crazy, but I loved it. I think. And I love the theme of your book, creating a book, a directory where tweens, teens, parents, librarians, teachers, ministers, rabbis, imams, where people who are involved with kids can go and find books that are going to, as the subtitle said, ignite empathy, help kids get a better understanding of others, and in the process get a better understanding of themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So other
Thank
than the fact that obviously the world needs this, what inspired you to do the work to create this book?
Right. So, I grew up in an interesting family. I had a father who struggled with alcoholism, and he was rather abusive. I had a mother who left him and came out as a lesbian. I had a brother with Down syndrome, another brother who was gay, and try as I might, I never found a novel or a memoir that reflected a family like mine. And so I read and read and read all through my school years, all through my college years, still didn't find that book. And then I adopted my daughter from Oregon's foster care system. And she's Black, biracial, struggles with a learning disability, and also absolutely adores dance and animals and insects and things like that. So when I adopted her, she was about 19 months old, and everything went pretty well for a while, but then she hit school, and she hit first and second grade, and she spectacularly imploded. And she would come home from school having bitten giant holes in her shirt and twisted her hair into knots. And she just had a miserable time. Finally, she started sitting under the desk and crying all day. And I realized nobody was getting any learning done. And I pulled her out of the class and I started to homeschool her. I was lucky enough as a full-time writer and online college teacher that I could adjust my schedule. And I designed a literature-based curriculum for her. So we chose a different novel every month, a novel that reflected my daughter's particular experiences and interests. And we did a lot of cross-curricular activities. So we might read a book like The One and Only Ivan, and we would go to a zoo, and we would go to the art museum, and we would study math related to silverback gorillas and things like that. And gradually, I saw that she became happier and more compassionate to herself and to others. And I thought, what is going on here? Because the same thing started to happen to me as we read books aloud to one another. And I started doing some research, and I realized there have been a whole lot of studies in the last decade that have found correlations between reading literature and our increased capacity for compassion, for empathy. And I thought, this is what the world needs. There is so much exciting, diverse literature out there now that we never had when I was growing up. I wanted to showcase 500 of what I considered the best novels and memoirs out there with diverse protagonists and settings by diverse authors. So that was a really long answer. I hope that's okay.
Oh, that is beautiful. Before we go any further, I absolutely have to say thank you so much for having the compassion and the love to adopt your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
It's just such a beautiful gift to your daughter and also to the world, because it makes the world a better place when kids find a forever home. So thank you for that. And thank you for what you described, the education that you created for your daughter. And not everybody is a online college professor and has the talents and the skills to kind of do what you did. But you described the ideal educational setting, I think, for every kid, where there's a loving adult who is looking at the needs and the interest and the learning style of each child and developing a curriculum to fit the child.
Right. I mean, I have to say that it was a privilege to do it. My husband and I both have flexible jobs that allowed us to work early mornings and work late nights so that we could attend to her particular needs. But it really, it was just an ideal education. And then, by late fourth grade, she wanted to return to school, and she's been there ever since, and she's having a wonderful time. But if I decide, or if she decides that she wants to homeschool through high school, we'll just pull out more books.
I have my theory, but why do you think? Because we're living in an age right now where, you look on TV and media and Netflix and YouTube, and so there's a lot of media content out there that has diverse characters. But why do you think reading about diverse characters, and reading has so much more of an impact on kids' self-esteem, on the way they live their lives, and so much more than TV and other kind of media have.
That is such a good question. So reading engages particular parts of our brain that make us feel a character's emotions with them. In fact, there was this really cool study done. I forget which university did it, but they found that, and they were using Harry Potter as an example, that when we read that scene in the first Harry Potter book in which he first flies on the broom, our brain waves mimic those of somebody who's performing that broom flying action, so that we're right there up in the air, zooming around the skies with Harry Potter. You know, the same thing happens in the brain when we're reading about a kid who uses a wheelchair and wants to be a world-class baker, as in this new middle grade novel that just came out called Roll With It. Or when we're reading about somebody else being bullied, we're able to really feel that, to empathize with that kid, and in a way that we can't necessarily do with television. The other thing about books is they give us a really safe space. They give kids a really safe space to explore frightening topics like depression and anxiety, or concerns about parents arguing or divorcing, or death and grieving. You know, it's a safe space, and it gives them language to express themselves. And thankfully, if we're engaged enough with our kids that we're reading the same books, then it gives us a common language and a common story to discuss particular issues.
That last chunk that you just shared, when we're reading the same books with our kids and discussing them with our kids, everybody out there knows that they should be sitting down with their 2- and 3-year-olds or their 2- and 3-day-olds and reading books. But we forget, I don't know if we've ever been told that reading, continuing to read with our tweens and our teens, and again, not necessarily on the couch all snuggled up, although that's kind of cool. Sure. Co-reading and discussing it, or maybe listening to an audiobook together.
Yeah,
that is
exactly.
it's such a powerful experience.
Yeah. And, I wanted to write better with books in part so that parents could find exactly the right book at exactly the right time for their child's or family's needs. And so you can look in the chapter headings, which have chapters and books about race and ethnicity, or spirituality, or body image, or mental health issues. Or you can look in the index and you can see, you can find a wealth of books about kids who are struggling with anxiety, or who have a sibling who has a disability. And so I wanted to help people quickly and easily locate the perfect book for the perfect time.
It's amazing that it has taken so long for somebody to compile such a listing of books.
Well, to be fair, there is a magnificent Washington State librarian, Nancy Pearl, very, very famous, and she wrote years and years ago a book called Book Lust, which also which describes books for kids. But those titles are from like 10 and 20 years ago. So this is a book that's updated for all the amazing diverse literature that's being published today.
And when you think about it, what was available 10 years ago and the public conversations that are going on now as compared to 10 years ago, it's a world apart.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It really, we really have grown and changed over the past decade. So there certainly is a need for Better with Books, and I'm so happy that you created this. Off the top of your head, are there any of the 500 books that it's not fair to ask you your favorite, but are there any that that have a special place or more special place in your heart?
Oh, there's so many. Let's see. Off the top of my head, I was blown away by Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alary Staines. And that's a young adult novel about two young men, Mexican-American men, growing up in the 1980s in El Paso, Texas. And they gradually realize over the course of the novel that they're in love with one another. Stunningly written, absolutely gorgeous. I love the young adult novel Far from the Tree, which tells the stories of three siblings adopted into three different families. Sorry, one of them is actually bounced around between foster homes. And just a remarkable and multifaceted look at adoption and the foster care system. I adore Wish Tree by Catherine Applegate, and actually everything by Catherine Applegate and Kate DiCamillo. And then so many other books I have never heard of that I ran across when I began to research. Jason Reynolds' Track series, Kwame Alexander's book in verse called Booked. My own MFA advisor, Jacqueline Woodson, has several books in Better with Books, including Brown Girl Dreaming, which is just a stunning memoir in verse. So I could go on and on.
Well, this is I love this, and we've had a couple of doctors, pediatricians, and behavioralists on the show that talked about bibliotherapy in using books to kind of help kids. And what a super resource for a family that's looking to do that, looking to kind of address some issues that kids are going through. I mentioned to Melissa earlier that my son had a real crisis in sixth grade. And this book would have been a wonderful resource for us to have at that time.
Right, exactly. I did interviews in Better with Books, not only with best-selling authors, but also with teachers and parents, librarians, and therapists who practice bibliotherapy with kids every day. And I did one particular interview with a therapist who works with teen girls and body image and eating disorders, and she regularly prescribed a couple of particular novels to those girls to help them process their emotions and heal themselves. So, adults are just using bibliotherapy for kids in wonderful ways.
Yeah, and what a joy that we're able to help kids and give them the support they need with a book, with conversation, with relationships, and if we can avoid using chemicals and pharmaceuticals, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things, we mentioned just really quickly that you were an online teacher, that you're a distance teacher. Just for a minute or two, just give a little bit of, because I've mentioned that the fact that my daughter chose to do an online degree program for college, and it was the best decision that she could have made for a number of reasons. But I know a lot of this is such a foreign concept for so many families out there, to the point that they don't even consider it, or they consider someone who does an online degree program as well, they're not getting all the benefits of going to a quote-unquote traditional college. Just from your perspective, if a parent was out there and asking, gee, my kid's thinking of doing this online thing, what should I think about it? Should I let them do it or what?
Sure. No, that's a wonderful question. So I've taught at numerous brick and mortar schools as well as several online programs, and I was an online English and creative writing teacher for Laurel Springs High School, that used to be based in Ojai, California for almost 20 years. a lot of my students, grades 9 through 12, where they were actors and actresses, or they were Olympic hopefuls, busy training. They were professional ballet dancers. So kids like that. There were also kids who just didn't fit into public school. For one reason or another, they struggled with anxiety or depression, or they wanted to pursue their own passions. I'm thinking of a girl, Selena Matthews, who I interviewed in Better with Books, and she was absolutely obsessed with insects and growing her own fruit and vegetables and working at her farmer's market, and she simply didn't want to spend 7 hours a day in the classroom. She knew what she wanted to do. She just graduated with a master's, I think, in entomology. And so she homeschooled and studied online. Good online programs give kids all the tools they need, all the academics they need. Often they're college prep programs. And then kids are free to pursue their passions, their interests. They're not spending hours and hours a day navigating passing periods or lunch or waiting for other kids in the classroom to do what they need to do. So it's efficient, it's tailored to the individual kid, and it works for a whole lot of kids. As well, there are a lot of free programs out there. I know that Oregon offers free online high school education, and as do several other states. You can also pay a small fortune for particular college prep programs, but there are all sorts of online options out there, and I encourage families to consider those. There isn't just one way for a kid to go to school. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the things that I did mention on the show, and I'm just going to mention it again because I think it's so important. There are free programs out there. There are paid programs. My daughter, one of the most attractive things for my daughter was that the online degree program that she chose allowed her to work in the field that she was interested in while she was going to school. She had the flexibility to do that. She also was able to pay her way as she was going because the program that she was in was only 25% of the cost if she had chosen to go physically to the same college. And
wow,
that was a tremendous savings. $55,000 a year she saved. And you know, and so she came out of school with the same degree that all of her physical classmates earned, but with no debt and with the pride of knowing that she paid as she went and with all that experience. And did I say no debt?
You did.
Now, I know that Better with Books, 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in tweens and teens. I do love that title. That's not your first book. You've written some others. Could you just give us a quick preview of some other books by Melissa Hart that we want to check out?
Oh, sure. I've written 2 memoirs. They're older at this point. The first one is Gringa, A Contradictory Girlhood, and that was published by Seal Press in 2009. And the other memoir is Wild Within, How Rescuing Owls Inspired a Family. And that's a memoir that was published a couple years back about how I learned to train owls and do environmental education while I waited to adopt my daughter, who was supposed to be from China and ended up from Oregon's foster care system. And then a couple of years ago, I had my first middle grade novel published, and it is Avenging the Owl, set in Oregon, also at a raptor center, a rehabilitation center for birds of prey. And it's won some awards, and last year it was an Oregon Battle of the Books middle school selection. So that's been lots of fun.
That is wonderful. When I saw Gringa on your website, it reminded me of when I first married my wife, and we would travel down to Puerto Rico to visit her family, and one of the affectionate nicknames that people gave me was Gringo, and I wore proudly until her aunt said, that's an insult. And I go, hey, I don't care. They say it with a smile and they give me a hug. They can call me anything.
Exactly.
So tell everybody where they can go to learn more about Melissa Hart and also more about Better with Books.
Oh, sure. It's super easy, actually. I have a website. It's www.melissahart.com. And people can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Wild Melissa Hart.
Well, we've had such a blast. I didn't even have a chance to go back and talk about the chaotic childhood that you had.
That's okay. They can read about it in Gringa.
There you go. Well, we want to encourage that. We want to encourage everybody. If you're a parent of a tween or a teen, or if you're the parent of a little one, you will be a parent of a tween or a tween before you know it. And I think that Better with Books, 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in tweens and teens, should absolutely be in your family library. And you should also probably want to suggest to your kids' school librarian and your public librarian that they should have it too, because I think it's a really important resource for families. It can make a huge difference in people's lives. We've had such a great time speaking to the author of that book, Melissa Hart. Melissa, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Oh, thank you. This has been so much fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest would be Kevin Poplawski. He'll be here to tell us about his beautiful picture book, Eli's Magic Moment. That is the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Speaking about magical moments, check this out. Are you the author of a great children's book and it's been published? I bet you experienced this magic moment. That's right. The minute you received your author's copy of that book and were made aware that the book was now available on sale, you were also made aware of the fact that, boom, just like magic, you went from being an author to the head of marketing for your great children's book. You probably didn't expect that, did you? Well, it's true. If you're the author of a children's book, you're the person who is most responsible for letting the world know all about that book. It can be a really daunting situation. Well, you don't have to do that alone. We would love to help you. We have a number of great author services that can help you celebrate your book. One of the most popular is our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. We have a panel of teachers, parents, and kids, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a number of really fantastic tools that will help your book stand out amongst the crowd of books that are published every single month. Check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Author Services button at the top of the page. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, the author of Better with Books, 500 diverse books to ignite empathy and encourage self-acceptance in teens and tweens, Melissa Hart. Check out her book today. We also want to thank our sponsors, Stephen Joseph, author of The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Sarah Ann Kinnear, the author of Little Pearls Reflection, a beautiful series that will ignite your kids' curiosity and help them develop great problem-solving skills. I want to thank my producer, Fida McCann. Be sure to check out her blog at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support that she gives me, and most of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Thank you so much for letting your family and friends know about the show. Thank you so much for writing a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. But most of all, I want to thank you for making the world a better place. And you really do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.